Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates, with your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. Today you're going to meet my friend Doreen, who will be talking about her trials and tribulations with her son Alec, who has autism. She shares how her son went from being completely nonverbal to speaking an entire sentence, which turned out to be not such a great thing, as you'll learn and you listen. Hi everybody, this is Cindy, Robbie's mom, and I'm here with another episode. And today we are talking to my friend Doreen. And for those of you that don't know, what I do for a living is I'm a color consultant, and people hire me to go to their homes and help them choose paint colors. And that's how I met Doreen. I came to your place to help you with paint colors, and I think we went to your son's room and he probably was banging it up or something like that. And I feel like my memory was that you were like, I don't know if I really want you to see this. His room is kind of a mess. And then when I asked, when we got into what was going on, I'm like, oh, girl, we're in the same boat. I have one of those too. Like, don't even worry. So, and then we became friends after that. So we're going to back up to the very beginning. I always ask all the moms the same questions. Okay. And it's very interesting to hear how different everybody's story is. So tell me about your pregnancy with him. Was everything okay? Everything was normal?
So both of my children, Alec was my second child. Both of my children, I had C-sections. They were both full-term pregnancies, but Alec was low oxygen at birth. So we were in Morristown Memorial, and he ended up in the NICU for 10 days, and I wasn't able to bring him home right away.
Oh, really? I had low oxygen as well, but he didn't have to go in the NICU. So what was his birth weight?
I don't remember the exact amount off the top of my head. I should know that.
That's okay, but he wasn't like small
range. It wasn't like, super low. I think it was like 6 pounds something.
Okay, it wasn't super low, and he didn't come early. He wasn't a preemie or anything like that.
No, but he was low oxygen at birth, and he had to stay in NICU, and he required a blood transfusion, and he also had no reflexes. And the neurologist thought that he might have something called spinal muscular atrophy, which I'd never heard of. And this neurologist was like convinced that my son had spinal muscular atrophy, which is something that has a very, meant he wasn't going to be around very long. So the whole experience was a very traumatic. It wasn't a happy time.
Yeah.
Worrying about this thing, and then it turned out that it wasn't true, and then I got a second opinion. It was a roller coaster. And then, they don't want to let you leave they don't want to keep you in the hospital past like what insurance pays. But I didn't like the fact that he was in the NICU and I couldn't bring him home like everybody expects to bring their baby home.
Sure.
So I camped out in the, I camped out in the breastfeeding lounge for the entire time so that I could be close to him and we could come home.
Really? And they let you do that?
Yeah, they did. I fought for that. Yeah.
So Alec, he was the second child.
Yeah.
How old, what's the age difference?
They're like 2 years apart, 22 months apart, my both boys.
Okay. All right. So then you bring him home from the hospital, and how did he hit his milestones as he was growing? Did he crawl on time, walk on time, all that?
For the milestones. I mean, having this being my second child and knowing what a normal child looked like, or a typical child rather is a better word, it was very obvious to me that there was something. I mean, I knew this like very early on, and I didn't know what was going on at the time. It was still kind of new as far as people understanding it, not like today. So, he wasn't making eye contact. He was arching back. I mean, all the typical stuff.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was he making eye contact? Yeah. See, and because you had another boy 2 years older, so it wasn't that long since you had already had a baby. So you were a little bit more on the ball. But from the very beginning, him being in the NICU, I think was probably made your antennas go up, just making sure, and you were where other moms maybe wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah, so mine, I kind of feel that it was related to the low oxygen at birth, you know, where some people have different theories about what caused it. You know, some people with vaccines, it comes right after, whatever. But in my case, I feel it was attributed to the low oxygen at birth. That's just what I feel inside it was.
Yeah. All right. So his milestones were behind it and everything. So I always try to get to how did we get to the diagnosis of autism? You know, and I always ask everybody who kind of noticed first. What were you noticing that was a little bit off, and who diagnosed him? Like, how did we get to that point, and how old was he at the time?
Well, you had to be 3 years old at that time. I don't know if it's that
How
way.
old is he now?
He's 22.
Okay.
So at the time, you know, I was reading all the books about, you know, developmental disabilities, and I started figuring out that this was what I thought it was. But in order to get an official diagnosis, you have to wait till they're 3. So I waited until he was 3, already knowing that there was something.
Wow.
It wasn't like this big surprise. And I took to the, you know, the Morristown, I forget what it's called, developmental center. And they confirmed, you know, what I thought. And at the time, they used a number scale to indicate the severity, with 1 being like not that severe. That's how the scale was, I guess.
Yeah.
But and 10 being like very severe. And they rated my son as a 9 in severity because at the time he made no eye contact. He was so far behind in his milestones. And he would just sit there and spin objects all the time.
And he was 3 at the time?
Yeah, he was 3, and they thought that he was going to be like severely autistic. So my story is kind of good in a way, in the sense that he's not severely autistic. He's very high functioning. And he just, you know, things started kicking in later. They started coming in spurts. So, you know, like for example, you know, he went to preschool, a special ed preschool in my town.
Wait, before you get to that, back up. So he had no early intervention then before he was 3. What was your pediatrician saying?
He did do early intervention and a special needs preschool.
I'm asking every mom the same questions because everybody's story is a little different, and I'm trying to help the younger ones too that haven't been through stuff yet, you know, and the ones that are, you know, if they even have babies and they maybe suspect, but they're not quite sure. And I want them to know who they need to go to, who they need to talk to get early intervention. Like, who do you go to? Some people it's the board of ed, some people the pediatrician tells them. Sometimes people have to go to the state, you know, like how do you, you know, so that's why that's the only reason why I'm asking these questions. Okay, so you get this diagnosis at 3 years old, but you already suspected it, so it wasn't a shock to you. And then he started a school.
Around, you know, 4 or 3.75, whenever that September came around.
So it was a preschool for what? Was he preschool handicap labeled, or did they said autism?
No, it wasn't autism. It was like a regular generic special education preschool in my local elementary school where my boys went, you know, up till 8th grade. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So he didn't go off to some other school. This was in your public school system. Mm-hmm. And it was a preschool in town. Okay. Because other people, you know, with typical kids, their kids don't start until kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Right. But once you get this diagnosis, you start earlier. You start at like 3 or 4 years old. They have these classrooms for the kids for special needs. Okay.
The classroom had people either with autism or PDD. It tended to be people that were very similar to him, you know, at various different levels. I think right. He, you know, I mean, there was one, you know, he might have been on the lower functioning side at that time, you mm-hmm. know, but not the lowest, but right. It was a mix of people. Yeah.
Okay. And did they use ABA to teach them?
I'm trying to remember what they used to teach them. I'm pretty sure, yeah, because the girl who was the teacher was a board certified behavior analyst, Pam. Mm-hmm. And they also use sign language, you know, to help bring, you know, for those that weren't able to communicate, which at the time he wasn't able to communicate, but it eventually did come, the communication.
Yeah, okay. Did they use a PEX, picture exchange?
Yeah.
Okay. And so when he started, he was not speaking.
When he started, he wasn't speaking, and they were doing cookie, and it wasn't PEX. He was using actual sign language.
Oh, okay.
Actual sign language.
Okay. So he would say, "Oh, do you want a cookie?" He'd sign for a cookie, and
all those signs.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So when did he start to talk? Do you remember?
So this is like the craziest thing. So he was in that preschool. I forget exactly how old he was, and then he went into their kindergarten. And I remember they were doing the sign language, and I remember thinking at the time, if you're gonna, I thought sign language was gonna like delay speech. A lot of people have that impression that if you teach sign language, it's gonna like prevent them from talking.
Right.
If the inclination to talk was there, then it would somehow suppress it.
Yeah.
And that actually turns out that that's not true. And I'd expressed that to the teacher, and she explained to me, no, it actually brings it on. And I was like, okay. So, he was doing those sign language for a while. And I think around kindergarten age, like out of the blue, Cindy, this is like the craziest thing. He went from like no language, I'm not even kidding you, like not even mama, dada, nothing, to I want to sit down and read a book. I swear to God.
Wow.
I literally screamed. Like, I screamed. Like I wanted to just go on the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Thrilling. It was just thrilling. Yeah.
Wow.
Like at that time I was dating somebody. I was divorced, and I got divorced when the kids were very young, and I was in this long relationship, and I used to go to my ex-boyfriend's house like every other weekend. And those weekends that I was away with him, I left my sons with my mother. And during those weekends that my sons were with my mother, she wasn't like, of course, they're different generations. So I don't think like she totally even knew what the heck autism was or even bought any of it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like my grandkids, I love them. And like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, nothing wrong with him. Just would not even comprehend that there was anything wrong with him, no matter how I pointed it out. Oh, he's just a little delay. Even after the diagnosis, she was not like accepting that he was different than anybody else. So anyway, so while I was away on those weekends, my mother would say to my son with autism, Alec, show me your eyes, show me your nose, show me your mouth, show me this, show me that, show me the other. I never even like this was before he spoke. And for some reason, it never occurred to me to do that. But this was like a grandma instinct or something. And she calls me up one day, when I'm away, and says, oh, by the way, I asked Alec to show me his eyes, and he's showing me his eyes. And I asked him to show me his nose, and he showed me his nose. And I asked him to show me his mouth. And then she kept going, all these different body parts. And I thought she was like imagining it.
Yeah.
Like, this is just grandma, wanting to just believe that everything is okay, and I just, because he seemed so out of it, that, it just didn't seem like he was present, that was, could be real. But anyway, I said, all right, Ma, all right, well, when I come home, we'll see, And then when I came home from that weekend, I go in and I'm like, Alec, show me your eyes. And I'm like, Alec, show me your nose. Alec, show me your mouth. And I was like, oh my God. And then I kept going, and I went beyond the like body stuff.
Yeah.
We went into the kitchen with him, and I was like, show me the refrigerator, show me the dishwasher, like lamps, like all these different things. And he pointed to every single one of them.
Wow. Was this before he started talking or after? Before. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're starting to realize he gets what you're saying. It's just not coming out. Yeah.
And then eventually, a little later on, like I said, that first was, I want to sit down and read a book. So yeah.
I talked to another mom that her son knew how to read the whole time and she had no idea. There's something else. Okay, so I want to sit down and read books. So did he learn how to read?
Surely, I think he might have heard somebody say that, or maybe he heard it a number of times at school. I don't know where it came from because he doesn't really like to read.
Oh, that's so funny.
Reader, but I don't know why that was the first sentence. I don't know if maybe he heard that a lot in school.
Maybe.
He just
maybe
he didn't even know what it meant. But,
yeah.
But those were the first.
Maybe it was something they were trying to get him to say in school. Who knows? Okay, so did he stay in that school all the way till he was 21, or?
No, not that easy. Never a straight line with Alec. So he stayed in that school until kindergarten. He was in the kindergarten class, which was also a special needs kindergarten class. And I forget exactly when, but somewhere along the lines, he started having behaviors, and he got into pulling fire alarms and, having the fire company come out all the time.
That's, in my children's books, that's one of the stories. Robbie did the same thing. Yeah. He pulled the fire alarm. Yeah. The fire department comes. Yeah.
Covered with the box, but then somehow it led to profanity.
Oh, that's one of the times where you wish they couldn't talk, right?
Started into this profanity. I don't remember. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say it on here. I don't even remember what it was. They were curse words.
Yeah.
That started coming out of his mouth.
When he was in school, he would do this.
In kindergarten.
In kindergarten, he said?
Oh. In kindergarten.
Okay.
And it became a thing where the school administration did not want him teaching the other kids these words.
Yeah.
And not liking it, and hinting that they kind of wanted him to leave because they just didn't want other children exposed to that language.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my jokes to families when that were struggling with trying to get their kids into out-of-district placements. I used to tell them, well, teach them a bunch of swear words.
Good to know.
And the truth of the matter is, I wanted that. A lot of parents, they want to go the path where they want their children to be mainstreamed and they're determined to make them mainstream. I've seen so many parents like that, And me, I researched both philosophies, and I didn't agree with the mainstreaming. I felt maybe someday, but I felt that I wanted him to be in a school with people that were trained to deal with people like him, that he didn't have to be bullied potentially or try to feel like there was something wrong with him. And I just felt he would make the most progress in a school that had others like him that were, that could accept him, embrace him, love him, and he wasn't going to be like that kid that pulls the fire alarms or something, or,
Right. Yeah.
So that was the path that we went, and we went to an out-of-district placement that was about a half an hour from my home. And he was there for, I forget how many years, but many years, many, many years.
And the Board of Ed was okay with that. They didn't fight you on it.
Because he said all those words.
Yeah, because he sort of was getting kicked out of the other school. So yeah, they had no choice. Okay.
Get a lawyer or anything. It was just,
okay.
Keep mine out of here, baby.
Okay, good. Okay, so he stayed in the other school for years.
He stayed in the other school for years. It was a very good school. It was a nice small school. They were very, very good school. But he didn't stay there all the way throughout. Eventually, he just got sick of it. I think he just wanted to change. So we tried a couple of different schools after that. And to be honest with you,
the school that he went to, was it a school for autistic kids or what was it? Okay.
Yeah, the behaviors were becoming too much for me to be able to manage him at home. I was a single parent raising 2 boys and working full time. And
like what kind of behaviors?
Mostly property destruction. I mean, seriously, like just breaking holes in the walls and, you know, just breaking mirrors. Just mostly it was in his own room. But it was sometimes, I mean, he would just trash the room. The bed had to be bolted down to the floor. The plexiglass had to be put on the windows. The closet doors had to have, like, we had to take off those sliding closet doors and put on like the regular doors. And my ex-boyfriend used to put little special hooks, and we used to just have to basically child-proof like the house.
Yeah, you have to get really creative to try to figure this stuff out, you know? Yeah.
And, you know, I used to have to, you know, have like a gate on his room at night so that, you know, I felt comfortable to sleep, that he wouldn't, because my bedroom was upstairs and his bedroom was downstairs, just to make sure, you know, he didn't run away or he didn't do anything like that. People sometimes came over and they thought like I was abusive because I had this gate, and I always used to have to explain this gate.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I mean, I had like a couple of people from the school who visited him and stopped by one day to bring a birthday gift, and they saw the gate, because what started out as like a baby gate, you know, those little gates you get for little toddlers or dogs, you know, and then eventually as he gets bigger, you know, they don't work, right? And
right.
So then, you know, I had it like, you know, have a custom thing made, you know, and then eventually I had a wrought iron door that I locked.
Yeah.
And it looked kind of like a prison cell, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of women from his school come over, and they called DIFUS on me. And, you know, I went stuff like that, you know, and then eventually I explained everything. I had the fire inspectors come out, and I explained everything to them.
Yeah.
And they were like, all right, it's okay. As long as you keep the key really close. And I did. I had the key on a little hook. So, you know, I had like a little luggage lock on it. I mean, it wasn't anything major, but, you know, I just didn't know what he was going to do at night. And, you know, I had to be able to keep him safe. So I had to do all those types of things. But,
and why do you think he was doing it? Do you have any idea?
I just think that it's obviously, I mean, it's a form of communication, the property destruction. But
what was, I mean, obviously something was setting him off. Like, is it because he wanted to do something and you said no, so he would, you know, break something? Or
with Alec, it was a combination of things. So the function, well, I'm using a technical term, but the reason that he resorted to property destruction, and it's still to this day occurring, is usually one of two things. He wants to, eventually, it's complicated, but I mean, generally it's boredom, or it's, you know, that it's boredom or that he's upset. It's really one of those two things. It could be, he just was always like interested in carpentry and home improvement. And he used to watch This Old House tape over and over and over until he wore it out, like Avila.
Yeah.
And, you know, so some of it was just like trying to do what they were doing on that, like, you know, like
hammering stuff, or yeah,
he would watch them, you know, like install a toilet, you know, and then I would take him to visit people's house. He would go to use the bathroom, and then the next time they went in, the toilet was like disassembled, and, you know,
he unscrewed the seat and stuff.
He just really, so a lot of it wasn't necessarily anger, although sometimes, but sometimes, you know, it led to destroying his entire room. And starting in around, I guess, 2009, that was 11 years ago. So I guess maybe it was about 11 or 12.
Yeah, but that's puberty age.
Yeah, when he started that age, and it got so extreme, I would end up calling 911 because to get him out of the house so that stuff didn't get further broken, and to, you know, get his meds adjusted or whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, it led to this thing where he liked the hospital. And so then he would start doing it in the hospital.
Oh.
And we refer to it as hospital seeking behavior. And Cindy, I have to tell you, I'm still dealing with this now at 22, that this started then.
What do you think he likes about the hospital?
He likes the attention.
Yeah.
He likes the clinical staff. He likes the structure. He likes the routine. You know, you wake up a certain time, your meals are brought to you a certain time. You know, there's no demands. You know, there's no school.
Right.
It's for him, he views it as like going to a hotel.
Right.
And I'm still struggling with this right now as an adult, big time. And it's a difficult thing to break him up. He has, you know, multiple diagnoses. I mean, he has autism, but he also has OCD, and he has impulse control disorder. And the OCD is so extreme. I mean, most people, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people that have autism also have obsessive compulsive disorder. They kind of go part and parcel with each other. But in Alec's case, I think it's also a genetic thing. And the OCD is so extreme that it's like textbook OCD. But it's not the OCD that you would see with a normal, typical, neurotypical person's OCD, where it might be like hand washing obsessively or neatness or lining things up. So it's not that. It's commingled in with the autism. And it's hard sometimes to tell where one begins and the other ends, and it's very difficult to treat. So it's actually his.
Like, give me a for instance. Like, does he ask you the same thing repeatedly over and over again, or like what?
A couple of examples. So, like for example, when he was living at home when he was younger, the OCD tends to be primarily centered around technology for whatever reason. He loves computers, he loves technology, he loves electronics, he relies on them to keep him from being bored.
Right.
And when he was younger, he would look at the little Wi-Fi, like those little semicircles that tell you like how strong your signal strength is, you know,
yeah.
1, 2 bar, 3 bars.
Yeah.
He was crazy if they weren't 5 bars. Like things like that, you know, or he would listen to Pandora and go on his computer and go onto the Pandora website. And then one day Pandora changed their website and it just completely derailed him, you know, or if the internet is down, like he catastrophizes about what is he going to do if the internet is down, and wants like all these backups, like a jetpack and a this and a that. You know, in the group home, like the internet has gone down a couple of times in the place that he lives right now. And it's just throwing him for like a major loop. It's mostly around internet, like quite frankly. But there are other things. You know, as a kid, he would say like, good night. And I would say, good night. And then he'd say, good night. And then I would say, and we'd have to do it like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
You know, and there were certain rituals like that where like, if I wanted to leave the house to go somewhere when he was younger, the microwave had the clock on it. It had to say exactly like on the clock, like on the hour, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock. If it was 3:57 and I wanted to leave the house, I couldn't leave the house.
Yeah.
0.
Right.
I mean, eventually I got him, you know, Zoloft and some medications, SSRIs to help with the OCD. And I was able to leave the house even at 3:57. But, you know, the OCD can only really be treated so much with, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, and SSRI isn't really the only treatment for medication, but it only goes so far. And the OCD is what is really, it causes arguments between us because he drives me out of my mind asking the same question over and over and over and over. You know, sometimes I have to give him reassurance and say 100% true. Like if I tell him something, it's not enough that I tell him that. Like if I say, you know, I have to say 100% true. And then I might have to say it like 2 or 3 times or something.
That's it for part 1 of Doreen's story. Be sure to tune in to part 2 when she starts talking about his violent behavior, property destruction, and handling that as a single mom. To see the video version of the show, go to our YouTube channel, Robbie and Me, Autism Reality. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of today's episode. Be sure to join us again next time to hear the second half of the interview on Spectrum Perspectives.